I think every American who is a discerning person knows that our nation is in a time of stress right now. We are in the midst of a redefinition of the American dream, and I think we can all feel that. In this time of stress, in this time of change, it would be very helpful for us to go back to our beginnings, to the dawn of our nation. In the earliest days of the framing of our country and the framing of America as we know it, the settlers were coming here from a Europe that was in very, very serious trouble at that time. Europe had been experiencing endless wars of conquest. Europe had been experiencing repeated plagues of infectious disease. European cities were places of great violence and poverty. And the first Americans in coming here from Europe, the first settlers in coming here from Europe, were coming to a place that they knew nothing about. They were coming to a place that for them simply represented an opportunity to start anew, to flee the challenges that Europe had presented. Wonderfully, they were welcomed by people who were already here and had been here for a very, very long time. They were welcomed, for example, by the Haudenosaunee, people in New England who had successfully achieved a remarkable kind of government. And these American Indian people were interested in helping the newcomers, interested in helping them understand how it would be possible to govern themselves effectively. And elders from the Haudenosaunee, people who became known later as the Iroquois, tutored John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton in how to frame a government. And in many ways, our American government reflects theirs. And in recognition of that, we actually borrowed the symbol of their government for our own seal. The eagle holding arrows is the symbol of the Iroquois Confederacy. So the settlers in coming here were capable of learning some things, learning some new ways of being, like how to govern themselves. But there were other things that might have been learned that would have application now that were not learned so easily. And I think it would be appropriate for us to spend a little bit of time looking at what might have been learned that would help us in our time of challenge now. One of the places where we can learn a bit that would help us is right here, Sonoma County, Northern California. When the first settlers arrived here in this incredible place, they could not comprehend what was here. They had no understanding of the beauty of this place that they would discover. They could not have known when they first were here that this was a place where people had lived in absolute peace for thousands of years. There were no wars of conquest. There were no wars of extermination. There was no infectious disease sweeping through as plagues periodically. This was a place where people had lived for thousands of years in enormous and wonderful harmony with the habitat. And if we can, thank you, get that other slide up, it will help. This was a place that was essentially a parkland. This was a place where you could walk over 1,000 square miles with almost no understory at all. A place that was dominated by the most incredible oak woodland as far as you could walk. It was a place where food was so readily available that in a matter of weeks, a family could collect enough acorns to be able to keep them alive for an entire year. This was a place so teeming with fish in every stream, in every creek, that the early Russian explorers recorded being able to wade into creeks in Sonoma County and catch the salmon by hand. This was a place that had lakes. Between the cities of Sebastopol and Santa Rosa, there was a 12-mile long waterway, so teeming with waterfowl that when the birds took off, the sky went dark. This was a place so teeming with game, in the meadows, in the grasslands, that there were herds here very similar in number to the great herds that I have seen in the Serengeti in Africa. Deer, Tule elk in numbers that are almost unimaginable. This was a place with vast meadows that had been kept as meadows by Indian people for a very, very long time, for thousands of years. Meadows of single plants that they had selected, that they had encouraged, that they had created for their own harvesting. They were capable of collecting single seeds by hundreds of pounds that were and are nutritious food that can be made into soup and bread and other meals. They even were responsible for the creation of the redwood forest as we know it. They were tending them and caring for them and the beautiful waterways that are there. They were controlling this habitat. It was not a wilderness. It was not a place of untouched nature. In fact, California was a tended garden. They were tilling, fertilizing, watering, pruning, trimming, planting, cultivating, and most importantly, controlled burning. They burned year after year after year to the extent that the grasses were very, very low, and when they would control burn, the oak trees would never catch fire. That the burns were very, very gentle and opened the understory to make this incredible parkland. The burning of the meadowlands also achieved wonderful success in terms of providing for them enormous amounts of food that were available very, very easily for their collecting. They were, in my research in the world, they were one of the most environmentally successful groups anywhere on this planet. That their environmental management techniques were so sophisticated, were so developed, and were so successful that life here was easy beyond what we could ever understand. For example, by encouraging the grasses to come back, they were responsible for the size of the incredible game herds that were readily available for them to hunt. These people are still here, the Miwok, the Pomo, and the Wapo. And the knowledge of their traditions, the knowledge of their land management practices are still here. They're still available for us to know about. It's still possible to learn from them. And among the things that we can learn from them is that they were successful in achieving absolute gender equality, that there were no limits for women anywhere in their culture. And that is still the case. If you look at tribal organization in California today, what you see is women at the highest level in every tribal group, in positions at every level. Absolute gender equality was part and is part of Native tradition here in this area. They, in addition to framing the habitat themselves, shaping the habitat themselves, creating a controlled environment themselves, they actually reflect the habitat, that they have a worldview, a way of seeing Sonoma County in which they're not living in a beautiful habitat only. It's deeper than that, it's richer than that. That they see themselves, my friends see themselves as sisters and brothers with the wild animals and with the other beautiful kinds of life, wildlife that we have so readily available here in Sonoma County. They also see themselves as having enormous responsibility to care for it not only in terms of managing the habitat and preventing destruction of the habitat, but they see themselves as having a responsibility to communicate with the habitat. And locally, there are some very, very interesting attitudes about wildlife, about taking anything from it. And one of the most beautiful rules that I have learned is summed up in this principle: never take without asking, and never take without giving thanks. That their way of seeing Sonoma County is a way that is grounded and rooted in spiritual awareness, that they see themselves as being responsible for the habitat at the deepest level of their being. So for local people, for example, who are of Wapo heritage, for local people who are traditional and are steeped in their tradition, this place that we call Mount St. Helena, as seen here from the beautiful Pepperwood Preserve, this place, this mountain, in their language, Anamota is the way that they would say it. This is the place from which their souls emerge. This is the place from which human energy originates. This is the place that when they pass on, their human energy, their souls, their spirits go back to this place. So for my friends who are traditional people from the Wapo tribe, for them to walk through a meadow like this is to literally look down and see the dust of their ancestors on their shoes. That they are not just living in the habitat, they are the habitat, and they see it as part of who they are as human beings. The successful environmental management produced a way of life here that is so incredibly astonishing. For example, all human needs here could be provided. All human needs for everything, housing, food, clothing, everything that people needed traditionally could be provided with the expenditure of labor 2 to 4 hours a day per adult. The rest of the time was free. How much free time do you have? If you wanted to work harder in traditional times, you could. You could go surf fishing like this in basketry, with baskets that were made into traps. And you can see a family here that are gathering some fish. There was time in the traditional days when Indians were in charge of Sonoma County. There was time to allow yourself as a human being to feel. There was time to be able to put into art, like a basket like this that has 5,000 stitches of redbud and sedge root. There was time to be able to feel nature and to put into the designs the symbols of the mountains, the symbols of lightning, the symbols of the birds, things that are masculine, things that are feminine, that what one could feel it was possible to put into art. And one's deepest sense of the beauty of the habitat could be transmitted through the mind of these artists into the baskets. And this basket made by a woman that I knew very, very well. This is a piece that was done by Aunt Mabel McKay, one of the great spiritual thinkers of this area. This is a basket that she did. And when I look at that basket, in my conception of what she was seeing, I see her relationship to the habitat and the beauty of what we have in Sonoma County. But this way of being human, this way of relating to the habitat, this way of structuring a relationship between people and the land was not unique to Sonoma County. This is a way of life that was profoundly available all over California. It was available in the Sierras. It was available in the deserts, and even the Joshua Tree forests of Southern California were managed in similar ways by Indian people. And the game herds, can you see the animals here? The game herds were readily available in Southern California for Indian people as well. But it's not just California where this way of life, this relationship to our land was available. This relationship to the habitat was also part of the Great Plains culture, where the Great Plains were lovingly cared for, and controlled burning was part of that tradition as well. They were so successful, Native people in the Great Plains, that we were looking at herds in the early days of exploration, single herds that were as big as the state of Rhode Island. One wagon train recorded passing through a single herd of bison. It took 7 days for that wagon train to pass through one herd of bison. That's what was here in America. That way of seeing America, that way of feeling the soul of America and allowing it to remain inside one's own being, that spiritual way of relating to America is something that we can learn from. And one of the things that I would like to see, one of the things that I would like to recommend is that in every religious seminary in the United States, that there be a strong environmental component in the curriculum so that our priests and our rabbis and our ministers come out rooted in the sacredness of America. I think it's time for us to feel again the beauty of our land that shaped the American psyche. I think it's part of the way that we can help heal ourselves and make our nation, make our country, make our culture a better place, to once again feel the beauty of what we have, from the glaciers in the north to the astonishing deserts of our southwest. We live in one of the most magnificent and beautiful places in the world, and it is fundamental, it's foundational in our own origins. And I think it's high time for us to be able to try again, to look at it and to feel it again, and to let its goodness seep into who we are as a people. One of the things that I think we can do as well is I think that we can strive for gender equality, that we can do better than we are in terms of that dimension. I would like to see us, for example, have something that really reflects the balance in our habitat. I would like to see us have, in every state in the Union, I would like to see one of the 2 Senate seats, one of those seats dedicated to women, so that half the United States Senate would be women. And I guarantee you, if that were the case, we would not be having some of the mess that we're in right now. And it's not about... And keep in mind, it's not about doing something for women. We need you. We need your wisdom. We need your insight. And we need your decision-making and your complete thinking at the highest levels in American government. One of the things we should also do is change our national anthem. We really need to get away from this British beer-drinking song that has been infused with lyrics about bombs and rockets. And we need to be thinking more about sea to shining sea and purple mountains in their majestic quality. And if we could present that to ourselves and to our children in schools like the beautiful one in which we're sharing today, I think that America would be a better place. We need to get our inner city kids out of the environment of violence and concrete and smog. And we need to be able to get our kids to understand and to bond with the heritage that is America. We need to allow them to be able to experience the beings that are here, the wonderful creatures that are here as part of the America that we know. To see the beauty, to see the peace, to see the tranquility is something that will help heal our nation. If we can once again have a time in which we can preserve more and more and more of the beautiful sacred lands of America, establish more parks, more preserves, more reserves, it'll be healthy for our nation. A healthy environment, a healthy culture will allow our optimism to soar again. It will allow our vision to be clear and far-reaching again. Let us think again about who we are as Americans. Let us do so in a way that we recognize the beautiful heritage that we have for our kids and for each other and for the world. Thank you.